Good evening and welcome to the interview on France 24. This edition is dedicated to a uniquely powerful book entitled We Still Have Words, a dialogue between two men that seem diametrically opposed. Georges Salines lost his daughter Lola in the Bataclan attacks on 13 November. Azdyne Amimour lost his son, who was one of the assailants who visited death upon the Bataclan. Thank you to both of you. Mr. Amimour preferred to conceal his face, which we respect, so I'll turn first to Mr. Georges Salines. A few years ago, Mr. Amimour made contact with you to propose a dialogue with you. He said that at the time he himself felt he was a victim. You may have found this puzzling. Now this book with two voices is coming. Why did you accept the dialogue?
Since the very day which followed the 13th of November 2015, my concern has been to find out how can we prevent future tragedies like this and what contribution I could make to this prevention. Military action or police action are very important, but I don't see myself contributing effectively in that way. But things need to be done in terms of prevention to not fall into the trap set by terrorists, which would consist of organizing a religious war on our territory and to provoke the 6 million Muslims who live in our country against the rest of the population.
No, I suppose there was some apprehension at the first contact.
A little bit of worry and perplexity. I didn't know what Azdyne Amimour wanted of me. I wasn't shocked by the fact that he saw himself also as a victim of what his son had done with his accomplices, because I had already had opportunities to meet the mothers of jihadists who were themselves Muslim women or Christian women or atheists, and who saw their children leave for the jihad and lose their lives in most cases. And I could see their great distress, their great sadness. They accumulated the loss of their child and a form of guilt, and we were asking questions about their responsibility for what they had become.
Mr. Amimour, first of all, a straightforward question. Why did you decide to conceal your face? This is something our viewers might wonder about, but also I would like to know, in this book, you say that your son has become almost taboo in the conversation, so why did you decide to talk about him with the parent of a victim here?
Well, hello. Well, I chose not to be filmed because I don't want to be a media star and I don't want to be exposed and take useless risks in this terrible world. So I wanted to remain anonymous for the moment. That's it.
Now then, about the second part of the question, you said in the book that the subject of your son has become taboo, and yet you decided to take it up with Mr. Salines in this book. Why?
Yes, I preferred to express myself. I have read articles and interviews which Salines has given, and I saw him on the media, so I said to myself, no, I'm going to try and get in touch with him, as I have also got in touch with other survivors and families of victims, and I have met them, and I think it's a good thing. I think a good thing to meet him, to explain to him, and to show my feelings and to condemn firmly these acts of violence which have nothing to do with Islam. There are Muslims and there is Islam, and each person interprets this in his or her own way, and to try and reveal the radicalization phenomenon and to support the families of the victims.
Mr. Salines, this book, this dialogue probably takes a lot of courage, but I suppose that met with some skepticism on the part of families of victims, even your own circles.
I didn't ask anybody for permission, except on the part of my wife and my sons, who have understood my approach. And today, the people with whom I talk about this and who are either members of the association or friends are very interested and in my approach and very respectful. And I know that there will be criticism by people. A lot of people hate me because I don't hate sufficiently in their view. But they must understand that I hate the terrorists and what they have done unreservedly. I can't forgive them, but I refuse absolutely to put in the same category all Muslims, of course, but even Azdyne Amimour, with whom I've had opportunities to talk about these questions. I don't think we should make the parents, brothers, sisters, children responsible for an act committed by another person.
Mr. Amimour, in this book, we understand that you try to bring your son back to the right path. You went to Syria to meet him, but I understand that you were not able to speak with him at all during that time. And reading between the lines, we get the impression that you did not dare to do enough. Do you believe that you could have done more?
Yes, of course. When you put things into perspective, you feel guilty. I should have done this or I should have done that. But it's not obvious. If you look at the topic in context, it's not obvious. When I decided to see him, I was very motivated, and when I got there, things took on a different aspect. I fell ill to begin with. I stayed in a small hotel. I was intoxicated. It lasted 2 weeks. And then when I crossed the border, I didn't have any rest because the next day was the Ramadan, so I had to fast. The day after, there was a lot of agitation, because it was the day on which they proclaimed the caliphate, and I stayed for 4 days, and we didn't even exchange 2 or 3 words. It was very difficult, and now I'm going to try and have a rest and then come back with some scenarios and try to do something. Unfortunately, a few days later, there were bombings again, and I was unable to do much.
Now, in this book, you ask each other about the childhood of your children, of your sons. Were you trying to get closer to each other to understand?
To try and understand. I try to understand how a terrorist is made. Why do young people? This is a big question. Since the 13th of November, Samy Amimour was 28, my daughter was 28. How do young people of that age, how can they kill others they don't know in a kind of delirious violence? And it's something difficult to understand. It seems to me essential to understand in order to prevent such acts. I work a lot in schools. I try to contribute to preventative actions. I need to understand. My curiosity was an important factor, and the second factor, I think it was important to write a book and to publish the book and do what we're doing today to show that we can talk to each other, we can work together. And I think dialogue between people of different cultures in our country is absolutely essential and needs to be defended. And it's a signal and an example, I hope.
Mr. Amimour, the striking thing in your dialogue, you discuss politics, religion, but also even movies. Now, is there a sort of resilient dimension, something therapeutic about it?
Yes, absolutely. It's a therapy. I wanted to do this with George. It's an oxymoron, the father of a victim with the father of one of the attackers. And it's an oxymoron with my son as well. In my childhood, I had all the ingredients to become a terrorist, a great terrorist even. I experienced poverty, contempt, humiliation, racism, poverty, and even imprisonment at the age of 11. And when I compare this with the life I gave my son, children, he had everything he needed. He went on holiday in the mountains skiing. He went to the seaside. He flew in planes several times. He drove, he experienced five-star hotels, and I didn't understand, I can't realize.
Listening to you, we quite understand that this book, where you shared your testimony with Georges Salines, the book does not have all the answers, but at least it raises the right questions. I'll display the cover again, because this interview is coming to an end. Georges Salines, Azdyne Amimour, We Still Have Words, published by Robert Laffont. The dialogue was edited by Sébastien Boussois. Thank you for appearing on the interview, sharing your testimonies. Stay tuned to France 24.
France 24. Every art form.
Liberté, égalité, actualité.